Fallout 76 is dropping this fall, and with it comes some big changes that fans might not be expecting. Some of the changes are obvious, but we've dug a bit deeper, and we have some really interesting and game-changing changes that you might want to hear. So here's Fallout 4 versus Fallout 76 with everything we know about the game so far. Also, it's worth mentioning, we gotta show props. A lot of this information has been gathered thanks to Danny O'Dwyer's no-clip documentary. There's a lot more Fallout 76 information in there if you are curious, so we do recommend checking it out. But starting off with number 10, thanks to that documentary, it has been revealed that the game will have more creatures than in all other games in the series. Among those mentioned were giant sloths, two-headed possums, and intelligent plants. Some of these have been highlighted in trailers, and there's a lot more apparently. We also know that Fallout 76 will lean heavily into West Virginia folklore and feature various mythical creatures and crypts specific to the region. West Virginia really is a hotbed for weird mythical creatures, believe it or not, and the game is already set to include the Flatwoods Monster, the Grafton Monster, the Dover Demon, the Loveland Frogman, the aforementioned Giant Sloth, the Snallygaster, and the infamous Mothman. With the Mothman specifically, Bethesda was hesitant to share too much for fear of really spoiling any experiences, but they did say that it will be a multi-stage experience, saying that, and I quote, "maybe at the beginning, he's just stalking you," which can be really eerie, so I'm all about it, and I think the new creature designs and just how crazy things are going is one of the more interesting aspects of Fallout 76. Now next at number 9, raiders are gone, and the reason for this is that Bethesda apparently found out that when raiders were all up in the mix, players would spend a lot of time just trying to discern if a hostile human character was a player or AI, and the studio didn't want that. So as a result, they opted instead for a new hostile NPC faction called the Scorched. The Scorched are half-barrel ghouls who are still cognizant enough to use weapons and armor, and will be the faction that is involved in the majority of AI gun combat in the game, which has been described as a central pillar of the actual new Fallout experience. It was further stated that raiders also didn't jive with the main game's lore or story, which is a world where every ordinary human you encounter is meant to be a player, and as such raiders would muddy the waters and go against the original vision, which is a pretty wild change considering raiders have just always been a Fallout thing. But very specifically, that leads to our next point at number 8. NPCs aren't a thing in the world of Fallout 76 at all. I just highlighted that, but that's a big enough change that I think it's worth fleshing out here. According to interviews from Todd Howard, first, like I said in the last point, the only humans you encounter are other players, but more importantly, that means you're not getting quests from NPCs. Instead, all the quests and story moments and stuff are gathered from exploring the environment and engaging with either robots or terminals. I need more information on this, really, to be honest. At the time of making this video, that's all we really have on this subject, but that change can really change up the flow and the feel of the game so much, so I'm a little nervous. We're just gonna have to wait and see how this really works out, especially for solo players. So I'm gonna leave this point a to be continued type of thing. But next at number 7, one big difference you need to know is that the game is 4 times bigger than Fallout 4. The map is set to be absolutely massive, but that doesn't mean it'll be really bland or samey as is common with a lot of huge open world games. The world of Fallout 76 will apparently contain 6 different distinct regions that are all of varying difficulty level and look, which allows for a more natural player progression. Details about these regions were mentioned in the recent no-clip documentary where they state that, and I quote, "Bethesda mentioned a hollowed out mountaintop, soggy floodlands, a festering toxic wasteland, swampy woods, and a colossal mountain range that bisects the entire map." I always think in big open world games, variety is the spice of life, and I'm very curious to see that considering Fallout maps have had variety, but mostly it's usually just a themed wasteland. Considering the time period and the setting here, I think we can see something different. So not only is it going to be ginormous, but I'm really excited to see how fresh it really feels. At number 6 though, as mentioned before, the world is larger than any Fallout game, but it's also said that it will be the most detailed, which can be chalked up to a slew of engine improvements in years since Fallout 4's release. The game features a vastly improved system for dynamic lighting and subsurface scattering, generating forests, and significantly improved and more complex animations for enemies and creatures, which is something that is very welcome, and it's also said to be the result of, enemies and creatures needing to be able to react to being attacked by multiple different characters at once. They had to change that animation system, and with it, the game just gets a slew of new animations. So considering it is going to be very much in a Fallout 4 engine and similar style, we've all seen so much of that game, so if things are lit differently, some things are generated differently, and if some characters move a little differently, I'm hoping it'll make all the difference to feel new. At number 5, you need to know that the world of Fallout 76 has a lot more verticality than previous games, which can greatly change the player experience, especially when adding multiple players into the mix. Think about it. The trailer shows a giant excavator where there will be similarly large landmarks across the map, apparently, which can be good for getting the high ground in a combat scenario, or even being used to really orient yourself and get a good feel for the surrounding area, which is a welcome change from the very stark and flat lands of Fallout 3 and 4. We've already acknowledged environmental variety, but I think verticality is going to be more of an actual gameplay changer type of thing. And coming down to number 4, Fallout 76 reportedly has drastically more food crafting recipes. You can find these recipes all over the map to make new things, and according to Bethesda, it gets a massive focus here. There was already like 50 food crafting recipes in Fallout 4, and although they were mainly simple, it's pretty impressive to see Bethesda really doubling down on the amount of stuff you can make to really buff yourself in different ways with various trade-offs. It's pretty indicative of the focus of the game here. They want people playing in this big world with their friends and not quickly getting bored, so they're throwing as much at you as possible, even in small ways like this, just down to cooking recipes. I would give them extra points if the cooking plays a goofy little song like in Breath of the Wild, because that's half the fun of cooking, but that's just me. And at number 3, apparently there are going to be more clothing items than ever, and discovering them won't always be random. Apparently, more items will need to be found in planned, specific spots. Bethesda gave the example of a real-world town location by the name of Helvetia, where in real life there's a festival centered around papier-mâché masks. I don't know, just go with it. Apparently there are 10 of them in the game that they made for you to find throughout the town. So the way we look at it, and we're spitballing here, but like expect to specifically find items in areas where they make sense, like maybe military garb and a military base. We've seen some stuff like this before, but apparently in Fallout 76, it's supposed to have a stronger focus. But speaking of specific locations, next at number 2, it's worth noting that the location questing has been shook up a bit. Some story and quest bits will be like locational stories that you would see as unmarked stuff in Fallout 4, but according to NoClip, one example Bethesda referenced was a firehouse in a town where you can specifically find firefighter gear and go on a mini quest involving the firefighter training grounds. And you actually catch a glimpse of a scene like this in one of the trailers too. Apparently the motivation here compared to Fallout 4 is to just give a bigger sense of discovery whether you're alone or with friends. And that's a good thing, I think, not just because of that fluffy intention, but because the world is so damn big. It's gonna need a lot more things to stumble across. And I hope the way they're integrating the sense of discovery with some questing and side questing, I really hope that this makes a difference. But down to number 1, we didn't even talk about character building, so let's talk about perks real quick, because that's very different. The perk system has really changed a lot from Fallout 4 to 76. That cute little clever perk chart from Fallout 4 is now replaced with a perk card system. And people seem kind of divided on this. I feel personally like the card systems kind of take the soul out of leveling up, but again, that's just me. The way this works is that every time you level up, you basically draw a new perk card. And then these cards are split up between the individual special attributes, but thankfully, you can swap out cards whenever you want while deciding between the limited number of them that you can have at one time. So there are limitations, but apparently it's a design choice to push different character builds so that playing with others feels a bit more dynamic and requiring a bit more teamwork between individual abilities. We'll have to wait and see it in action before we know how much of a difference it truly makes, but hopefully it still feels like RPG character building. But those are some big differences that we wanted to point out between Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. There is some more information out there, and it's trickling in by the day, by interviews and stuff like that here and there. So we want to know down in the comments, what is one of the biggest changes you're looking forward to, and what is a big change that you're really kind of nervous or not sure about? If you can give us one of each, we would love to hear that down there, so let's talk about this stuff. Anything else you got for us about Fallout 4 or Fallout 76, be sure to leave it in the comments or on our Discord. And if you enjoyed this video, clicking the like button does help us out. We really appreciate it, but you should also consider subscribing because we put out stuff like this every single day. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.